Okay, I think the recording is on. And I'm also going to share my screen. Let's see. All right. Can everyone see the slides? It should be blue and white and say EMCO Wikidata Community of Practice.
We can.
Fantastic. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the EMCO Wikidata Community of Practice winter meeting. It's been a little while since we've seen each other, but I'm Mary. I'm one of your registry coordinators. And today we are going to be talking about a few early adopter phase updates, what exactly is going on with the application profiles right now, and then everybody's favorite, statistics and how we're going to keep them, hopefully. So, a few updates. We're considering reopening the community of practice in March. The larger EMCO community is still deciding whether or not we'd like to reopen for a new cohort of folks. We've been pretty flexible about who we're letting in, so we've been letting in people off cycle anyways. So if you have a friend who you want to have join us, you should let us know. We can add them to the Google group, or you can add them to the Google group, I think. Let me know if you can't do that. But we are going to have like an official call for a second cohort sometime in March. The exact date is still to be determined. Currently, we have 140 members. And so far, thanks to everyone's work, there's 800 uses of Wiki Project, PCC, EMCO, Wikidata, Community of Practice in Wikidata. That is a mouthful. Okay. And then finally, I'll share these slides afterwards. But in case you missed it, we also had some sessions at the LD4 Wikidata Affinity Group last year and during the LD4 2025 conference. So let's talk about those application profiles, shall we? We looked at those for quite an extended period over the summer. We ended up moving them from the application profiles page to the crosswalks page so that it's a little more clear what they actually are. The first iteration for persons and corporate bodies was approved, and we initially, I think, said that we would have another review cycle in January, but now we're thinking that it might make more sense to have the next review cycle start in April, because then it will align better with the statistics that we're keeping. I'll get into that in a minute. For now, we're still discussing how exactly to propose changes during the early access phase. And of course, we are always open to your suggestions. That is why we are having this meeting. And if you thought that this 800 uses piece was really cool, here's how you can contribute if you aren't contributing already. You can edit or create Wikidata items for persons or corporate entities. Then you just add that statement right there on focus list of Wikimedia project. Personally, I like to just type in P5008 and it'll come right up. And then you'll put in Wiki project PCC, blah, 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 blah. It's very long. So I actually have that QID saved on my user page so that I can just copy and paste it right in. Optionally, you can join or add a project. Most of the projects so far are university focused. We're hoping to have some more that are not like so institutionally focused within the next few months. But that is also a good way to get to know people and work on a project that moves in a particular direction. Let's talk about statistics. So, we the EMCO group as a whole, so between us in Wikidata, ISNI, and WorldCat Meridian, we've drafted a document for how we're going to do statistics broadly. So basically, we're thinking that the statistics cycle for us should align with the general PCC statistics reporting cycle. So that'll be from, and somebody jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's April to October and then November to March or something. So basically, the reason why we want to re-review the application profiles in April is because we want to see how it's working during that November to March period because we were still constructing it during the previous statistics reporting period. We're still working out ways to gather statistics. There's been some discussion of maybe we just do it low tech and do hash marks on our own individual pieces of paper, which is totally an option. Full disclosure, I am very, very bad at the low tech hash marks on a piece of paper method of recording statistics. So we're also discussing using Sparkle queries. That's how we know that we have 800 instances of items attached to this project. And also we are fortunate in Wikidata to have tools that will help us count the number of edits we've made, the number of items we've created within certain time periods. So we're also considering using that. We're also having a lot of discussion of what counts as a contribution, right? Because a single edit on a single item, just a drive-by adding a really quick Library of Congress identifier to something is a contribution, but it's a really quick, it's not quite on the same level as, say, creating a whole new item that's beautifully referenced with all kinds of cool qualifiers. So we're still discussing what that means generally. So that's kind of what we're up to these days. And we have some questions for you. So this is the part where we can all unmute whenever we want because this is a small and intimate group. And let us know, how do you collect NACO statistics now? If you are at an institution that collects NACO statistics. Don't all everybody rush to
We still use the check off mark on, I don't know if you can see this, but basically this is mine. I've got lots of hashtags for each month.
Okay. Oh, sorry, hold on. I'm gonna scooch the notes over to my other screen so that I can actually see them. Okay. Oh, somebody else is already doing it. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Robert.
Yeah, for collecting our NACO statistics, individual catalogers each have we have something set up in Google Sheets where everybody enters their statistics at the end of the month, however they personally keep track of it. And I'm one of the people, I have a sheet of paper and I just do the check marks. But at the end of the month, people enter their stats, and then it's set up that then it kind of centrally pulls the statistics we need to report, like how many BIBCO records were created, how many personal name NARs were created, and then I'm usually just kind of gathering this up every 6 months to report to PCC.
That's the same for us. The catalogers take their monthly stats and put them into an Excel or Access of database. And then every 6 months, I go into that and ask for accumulations to report to PCC.
We use OCLC statistics because it tracks how many contributions and how many replaces people have done. So we mostly rely on that. We do tracks because we want to track series separately. We have those, a different way of recording those.
Okay, that is all super useful to know. Thank you so much. Okay, thanks, Mignon. Ah, I was not on the right slide. Excuse me. Okay. So given that baseline of how we collect our NACO statistics, how do you imagine capturing your statistics for EMCO? Like, are you marking down all of the new items that you create on its own page, or are you using the statistics in Wikidata or something else?
When we were doing the kind of some of these Wikidata pilot projects, we ended up having to our statistics sheets things added for Wikidata, such as creating items and editing them. So we would probably be able to use that to collect our statistics. We'd have to take another look at them to see if the categories match up correctly with what we'll report to EMCO, but probably something like that.
Okay. Lots going on in the chat, so I'm just gonna
I
read
was
that
gonna,
out since the recording is not gonna capture
yeah, I don't know
everything
if
in the chat.
Crystal wants to say anything, but so used to have one Wikidata login and now I have two because we set one up just for EMCO work, and that gets counted by a dashboard that Crystal set up.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think Mary, we had done that, kind of copying what you were doing. Like you have your EMCO login, so now we also have an EMCO login. And we're also, well, I don't know if everyone is, but I am adding P5008 with like University of Washington Libraries Wiki Project EMCO. So we could theoretically track it that way. But if we want to collect things that the dashboard doesn't collect, then um, that would be different. And I think that we've got some things on our statistics that the dashboard doesn't track. So maybe something like a centralized um, query once a month or once every 6 months to see what's been done could be a good way. I don't know how we query edits, but I think it's possible.
I'll admit that I've never queried edits before. Usually when I'm interested in how much of something I've done, I've used the contributions tab um, in my Wikidata account. However, as Sasha mentioned in the chat, that gets really tricky if you're doing non-EMCO work on the same account because you won't be able to tease them apart.
Hi. So I just want to I was thinking about this. Using the focus list property, it seems like a good workaround. Except I'm wondering if everyone starts putting their focus list for their own personal. I'm not complaining. I don't want to discourage anyone from doing what they're doing, but like if every institution starts putting their focus list on every single item that they're touching, it gets kind of unwieldy, doesn't it? Like, is that the, do we want to go down that road? I mean, I don't know if there's any better way to do it, but I'm just wondering if um, it feels like, every time you open up OCLC, a bib record and you see all the 029s in there and like, it just gets, there's a lot of identifiers that are not applicable across the board, maybe just to one person or several people. Um, and maybe I'm just worrying too much about it because maybe there's not going to be 50 people touching the same item, but it does feel like you're adding something that may not be universally useful. I don't know.
think that's a really good point because I think we're considering using the P5000 5008, sorry. Um because we're interested in the work that EMCO is doing as a whole. I don't think, well, someone else should jump in if I'm misunderstanding, but I'm not really seeing it as kind of like the 040 symbol on an OCLC record. I think if we wanted something like that, like who specifically is making the edit, we have to go into the view history page. That's, you know, what it's for. Or am I misunderstanding what you're saying, Kevin?
No, I don't. It's not a fully formed thought. I was just thinking that, if every EMCO librarian
Mhm.
was including the EMCO 5008, also their own, like I have the Stanford EMCO 5008, and then, Adam decides to do some massive edits on that one and adds the Washington, then there's three. And then, maybe we're also using it, I'm creating this as part of another project that I'm doing with the Music Library Association or something. That's four, so it just becomes like this list that gets longer and longer of projects that maybe I don't know. I feel like I like the I like the focus list um property when I am trying to actually make a focus list that will be maybe repeatedly, using it like in the Listeria app or something where you want to bring everything together and show them all in one place. Um, I wish there was a better way to do statistics. I don't know if there is, but that's my concern, and it's not something that I think I don't have any solutions, and like I said, it may not be a non-factor, but it's also something that I can see happening if we all get our own, I can mod the focus list of Kevin Kishimoto's Wikidata project, and then I can I mean, that's ridiculous, but it can be very granular and it can be it can add a lot of stuff to the item.
Yeah, I just sent Crystal a private message saying, are we supposed to add the P5008 that we have set up for UW EMCO along with the broader PCC one, and she replied undecided. So
Well, I mean, that is kind of
Sorry,
why we're having this discussion.
I'm at home with my kids unexpectedly, so that's why I'm a little less present right now than I usually would be.
That's okay. But yeah, I agree with your overall sentiment, Kevin. It's kind of messy, and I'm not sure that there is a better way to do it. I mean, just personally, that's why I made a separate account for EMCO stuff because EMCO is not interested in the Japanese biographies I import from Wikipedia into Wikidata every month. But EMCO is interested in the other work that I do, so I just made a whole other account so it's easier to keep track of what's going on.
I only see, I did just a item search with the words Wikidata and EMCO, and I only got 4 items, one for the whole project, and then one for VCU, and one for UW, and one for National Gallery of Art. So it looks like only 3 institutions have set up separate items to use in P5008.
Right, but I think we can assume that that will grow as we move out of the early adopters phase. But I guess,
I think if one of those is used, then the sum of all of them adds up to the bigger group, doesn't it? Theoretically, if every institution has its own item. for that?
Yeah, I think also all those institutions that have their own items, it's part of the EMCO item. So there's like a
It
relationship
should be a
there.
subclass of, right?
Right, and you
Yeah.
can query for everything that is a subclass of something. So yes, that is true. We should be able to get all of that.
Yeah. It's just a question of whether we think that we're cluttering up the items or not with all of our different ones and how many of us are realistically going to be touching the same items. Like if we're all using the same application profile and Mary does an item, how likely is it that I'm going to add more to it after Mary is done? I don't know how likely that is.
There's a fair likelihood that somebody will go in and do something to it later on, but whether that would be another TCC institution or just some other editor of Wikidata is unclear. But I get notifications all the time of things that I created that somebody else has now done something to.
Definitely. But that would be like, I think what we're talking about is potentially having on focus list of Wikimedia Project, EMCO, Cornell, and then we come along and look at the same item and say, okay, we're going to make a bunch of changes with the
Mhm.
same application profile for reasons unknown. And then it's also on the focus list of Wiki Project, University of Washington Libraries, EMCO. And then Stanford comes along and does the same thing. So if we're all using the same application profile, essentially, I don't know how often that's going to happen and whether it's going to end up being super unwieldy. And I also don't know whether the statistics we're tracking, if it's important to distinguish which institutions or which individuals did what thing, or if we're just trying to tell the statistics story of EMCO as a whole. And if that's the case, then we probably could just use P5008 EMCO big item.
Is this maybe something that we could take a look at kind of over these next few months and in April, see if we actually have a lot of folks that are working on the same items? It obviously won't be at the scale that we'll want to check, but it may be something that we just kind of keep an eye on as things are actually being generated to see if we are kind of working on the same items at the same time.
I think it's more likely to happen over a longer time frame. Like, for example, one of our students gets a degree here and then moves to UCLA and becomes a faculty member or gets another does another degree at another university. And so they might think they need to create the item, but now they have more information about where the person was educated, or the professor is now publishing in papers and stuff like that. So I think over time, particularly students that become faculty and et cetera, are likely to move around and get multiple edits from different institutions.
I guess if I can just like zoom out for a second, why would we want to put individual, like why would each university in this cohort want to make their own EMCO item anyways?
Probably because we're used to seeing our code in MARC authorities as that we've done something to it. So
Right.
that there's a history that each institution has touched this in some way, and you can actually view the history of it even in the MARC records in OCLC.
Right. But I guess what I'm wondering is like, do we have to recreate Mark in this way? Are we very concerned about the edits that, say, Cornell is making versus University of Washington? Because I would imagine that, some of us are probably going to be recording our statistics on paper, which means that eventually we will have to turn in forms, at the end of March so that Crystal and Jennifer can aggregate them. And I guess if we're very interested in how much each institution is doing, I guess wouldn't it make more sense to collect it that way than trying to recreate the 040 field when a view history button on an individual item exists? Because usually personally, when I use the 040 field in a mark authority record, it's because something is weird in the item and I'm trying to figure out who did it and if it's a pattern.
Hmm.
And I don't know, I guess I'm just not very sure why we would all be making different EMCO items for our universities.
I was thinking the same thing, Mary, that like that reasoning is kind of like the contributions or the edit history tab does the same exact thing, so we don't necessarily need it for that. But I think that in this scenario where somebody is adding their individual institution MCO item, the reason why we would do that is because we don't want to keep paper statistics for that. And so instead, we would just have like an automatically updating listeria list or something that counted how many this month, and then the following month, how many are there now? Subtract, that's how many you did. Um, so I think that it wouldn't be duplicating the paper statistics, it would be taking their place. And then at the end of whatever reporting period, we could just run whatever query and do much easier math and report our statistics that way. And that's kind of an attractive idea to me because I know for sure that I under tally my statistics every month, most likely. I've got like a piece of paper that I tally them on, but sometimes, you just get in the zone and you do a bunch of stuff and then you remember your statistics form is just sitting there neglected. So, like, I think that was the reason why we did it. And we also created our own during the pilot, like the PCC Wikidata pilot. So I think that's also to an extent what we're used to doing is tracking it that way. But if it doesn't matter, if the individual counts are not what matter, and what matters really is how much is the community of practice doing as a group, then um, yeah, I don't know why we would even put on focus list and we wouldn't just have a dashboard tracking the similar things.
Yeah, that would save a lot of work, not having to put that property in there at all.
Yeah. But
If you're
then
logged if you're logged in.
we've also got things from EMCO Coco that won't be tracked by a dashboard. But we could talk with Wiki Education, like Will Kent, and I think there's someone over there named Sage who like runs the dashboard, and we could see whether it was possible for them to expand into the areas that we want to collect. So
Do the do the outreach dashboards expire? Because I have only ever used them for like limited time edit-a-thons, and I was under the impression that they like stop recording after a certain date or time that you set up.
no, you can leave I think it might be a newer development that you can leave one open. So ours doesn't have an end date right now, I don't think. Or you can just keep extending it. Um, but we also, like the LD4 Wikidata Affinity Group uses a campaign with individual events. So
Mhm.
that way it would be possible for us to have, we could even have separate, like what we have at the University of Washington now is a separate dashboard just for the University of Washington's MCO work. And then we could plug that into a greater campaign for MCO. And then we could track statistics for campaigns and individual events that are ongoing, kind of open ended time. But that would require folks like me and Adam who do a lot, and you, Mary, too. And I'm sure a lot of us who do some MCO editing and Wikidata. And then we do a bunch of other stuff too. So we would need to have separate logins for the dashboard scheme to work because the dashboard tracks universally all edits.
I try not to do my perfume editing and logged in as EMCO, Mary.
Same. Yeah. I'm not editing my baseball player profiles on my MCO login.
I mean, when someone writes a biography of them someday, you can make an LCNAF record and they will immediately count for MCO purposes. But
Oh, that's true. Maybe I need to revise some of that because one of them I went nuts and I made an MCO or I made a NACO.
anyways, I guess
I'm
Kevin,
just thinking,
oh, Josh, hello.
hi, I'm just thinking another purpose beyond recording statistics, both locally and for EMCO, that it's been valuable to spend the extra time to add for P5008 is as locally and at the EMCO level, it's been somewhat of a pilot in terms of we've been working through what our recording structure and things are, we've been able to go back and see everything we've done previously on this project and add an element that we hadn't previously had on our um, structure and plan. So I think it has up until now been pretty useful to be doing that extra recording and adding that project element. Um, and as Crystal says, it's good for training as well. And we haven't been bothering at all with like hash marks on a piece of paper.
I'm glad to hear that someone else also has not been bothering with hash marks on a piece of paper. I mean, I guess, does anyone else have any thoughts or preferences for how we record these statistics? Because what I'm sensing is there's kind of two main camps here. The P5008 camp, where we add a statement to each item that we create or edit, and the outreach dashboard camp, which would require that someone only uses their Wikidata account for EMCO purposes and make a different account for all of their not EMCO stuff. Am I understanding that right? Or does someone else have a third and even more brilliant idea?
I think we should think about what we're trying to capture because like we've got a list that we made for MCO Coco that I don't have in front of me right now. But we probably want to make sure that for either of these hands-free options, we're collecting all of that data. And if not, does it even make sense to do those? Because if we're, you know what I mean? So we might need to end up, one approach might not meet every single need, is I guess what I'm saying. Um, so we might want to identify needs and make them really concrete first, and then will help us guide the choice for for the methodology that we're using.
That's a good point. Shall we step back and consider what are we actually hoping to do with these statistics? Because I assume that the main reason is so that we can take them back to PCC and say, look at all the work we're doing. EMCO should be an official, fully fledged this program.
EMCO is an official, fully fledged program.
Oh, great. Mission accomplished.
Yeah, we did that. It's done, but we want it to like continue and keep expanding. And we also want more people involved. So I think that's kind of the story that we're trying to tell is not so much justifying the existence of EMCO as a fully fledged program, because that's sort of what all these pilot programs accomplished. But we want to be able to measure our impact in the same way that other existing programs are doing. So NACO has, reporting statistics, and so does SACO and BIBCO and CONSOR. And so we want a way to demonstrate our impact as a program and to kind of show that identity management and entity management is a really essential component of our work that has a much broader reach as far as numbers go than traditional authority work. And so bringing that alongside in more PCC institutions is kind of, I think, from what John Reamer has said at IMAC meetings and like Michelle DeRocher and folks who have been in on IMAC for a lot longer than I have, that's sort of the goal is to say, well, okay, we are doing authority work and we can only do so much of it. Entity management work, identity management work, we can do a lot more of that and it's a really good complement. So if we're tracking numbers program wide, I think that's what we were wanting to accomplish. And that was the reason behind those questions about NACO. Like, hey, did you merge a NACO item because of this? Or are you doing this instead of NACO or in addition, and why? I think that those are part of the statistics collecting form. Um, and I don't know, maybe we need to just like pick one or the other automated methods for some of the statistics, but some of them might just need to be hand counted because I don't know how else. It's like Wikidata is not going to be able to count a judgment call that you made in your mind what why you were pushing the buttons that you pushed. So sorry, I just rambled.
No, that's okay. Don't be sorry. So I guess aside from the big picture EMCO use case that Crystal described, does anyone else have a particular interest in what kind of statistics we collect? Like, what kind of statistics are you interested in locally with your EMCO work?
We haven't really discussed that from the point of view of what my boss would want or what we would need to report to the library as a whole. So it's not clear to us either, I think. And we have only a few of us that are actually going to, at this point, be doing EMCO work in Wikidata.
I know something I've been interested in capturing is the interaction between that EMCO work and the university, the Binghamton University, because if I can prove it is like improving faculty profile, then I can get buy-in to let other people do that work, right? So it's kind of like a way to create a narrative about how we're increasing that profile. So that's something, and I think that's something that is findable with either of these statistic capturing methods.
Crystal said that's a good point. Anything that helps with institutional buy-in is very helpful. With you there. Anybody else? If not, we can stew on this. We've got another one of these tomorrow, stupidly early in the morning for Pacific Coast people, but it'd be what it be. If not, if we want, if there are no lingering thoughts about statistics, we do have two more questions for you. Going once. Going twice. Li Hong says, I just collect a number of new Wikidata items created and existing Wikidata items updated. In the editing part, I did not count any existing items that didn't fit the EMCO Wikidata profile criteria. Interesting. So that means you're not I assume, please unmute or type in the chat if I'm misunderstanding. But so basically you're only counting things that are people in corporate bodies. But if you say touch a geographic item because it's related to the human that you're working on. You're not counting that.
So far, I've only been working on the person and the corporate bodies. I haven't done anything on the geographic. I've been doing the geographic one, I think, through a different project, so that has a different project number. What I meant, like, while editing some of the Wikidata items, it has information for gender, birth date, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to delete them. I don't want to claim them at PCC EMCO. Although I did extensive editing on those, I just don't count them, I think.
Fair enough. That makes sense. Thanks, Leon. Okay, with 16 minutes left, I'm going to scooch us over to the last pair of questions. Well, we can come back to this if anyone has a burning desire to say something or a new brilliant idea. All right. So, zooming out a little bit. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the early adopters phase. Sorry. And we were wondering, what else would you like to see from the early access phase, especially since we're hopefully going to be having a new cohort soon? Oh, yes, and as Sasha wrote in the chat, if you have any ideas or comments, the notes document is always here because we're going to be reviewing this once both meetings have been held. Oh, yeah, we can totally put the link to the notes doc in the chat. Actually, Sasha, can you put the link in the chat? Because I have a million things on my screen.
Absolutely.
Thank you. But yeah, how can we help you? I'm totally kidding when I say this, but I assume from the silence that we are doing everything absolutely beautifully and you need nothing further from us. Yes, Gina, please.
Hey everyone, thanks for having the meeting at a time that works for us West Coast folks. I'm Gina. I work at the University of San Francisco and I'm glad to be here. I think in response to your question, what support do you need to participate? I'd love a common dashboard, right? I think we've got some folks who are motivated by seeing statistics that are being gathered for them. So it'd be great to have some dashboard to be able to use at the sort of network level, not just at the institutional level. And I'd love to hear more. I'd love to have some more spaces where folks who are working on projects can share in the group, right? Like, hey, here's what we're doing at my institution. Here's the kind of success we've seen. Here's what we've been doing. I think that kind of community sharing would also be motivating for folks who maybe are losing steam at their institutions or maybe are working at non-NACO libraries or feeling a little bit more on the fringe of the community. So that would be my feedback.
Thank you so much, Gina. Definitely, I think if we go the dashboard direction, we probably should have a common EMCO dashboard for everyone to contribute to. And then for your other comment about more spaces to talk about projects, I love that idea. Um, but and also, oh, Prue is running a little late today. Um, but also, I feel like a lot of the spaces that we've had have really overlapped with the LD4 Wikidata community. And I guess I'm wondering, like, how many people, like, in this group, in this session right now, like, hang out in the EMCO, sorry, in the LD4 Wikidata community? Is there as much overlap as I'm assuming? Yes, Crystal.
Sorry, I was just meaning to say, yes, I hang out there. I think there's a ton of overlap, and I think that's good. And, as much overlap as we can possibly get with that group is excellent because they do awesome work. So I think, the project series for them, as one of the co-coordinators for that group, I hope that I'm not out of line saying that like EMCO projects or EMCO related project sharing would be fabulous for programming for the LD4 group too. And that's sort of something that we already have infrastructure set up for. So um, maybe we can work in both spaces as it's easy for us.
Okay, is anybody on this call not familiar with the LD4 Wikidata Affinity Group? I think that's more the question that I'm asking when I'm asking about overlap. Yes, Prue says that in Australia we watch LD4 enviously, but asynchronously given time zones. Time zones are truly the worst. Actually, so before I came here, I was working in Hawaii and I would not make it to a lot of LD4 events either because they were at 8 in the morning and I was walking to work. So I totally feel you, Prue. Adam, I see that you've unmuted.
I think I've just been unmuted the whole time. I
Okay then.
didn't have anything particular to add.
Okay, well then maybe assuming the LD4 Wikidata folk don't mind, perhaps we can co-opt a little bit more of their space for a EMCO talking and sharing space.
And we could definitely work with them to move around the time zones a little bit more. And maybe for some of our EMCO related programming, we have like double sessions where some of us in one time zone host a session, and then there's a similar, almost identical session for other time zones. I think we figured out in this group and for EMCO meetings generally, there's like the Pacific-ish time zones that work okay together, and then there's everybody else. Um, so, and I think that we have enough geographic spread in our group to be able to successfully host stuff for both time zones and make it convenient for everyone.
That would certainly be ideal. I'd love that.
So I've got a sort of procedural overlap question. So I'm working on another project It's a music specific project that um, through which we are creating people items for persons. Um, can I just double dip and like use? I mean, is this? It's not something I came to as an EMCO person. Is something we've been working on for a while, but it also is something that, I will follow, or we will follow, as much of the application profile as we can, and I can easily put in another, like I wasn't arguing against the 5008, but we can put in two 5008s to cover both projects if that's something that, um, like I don't want to overstep and say like, well, this is an EMCO thing because I was going to do it anyway, whether or not I was an EMCO member or not. So what are the thoughts on that? I assume. Well, I don't want to assume anything, but I feel like it's doing work that kind of contributes to the profession, EMCO profession. It's encouraged. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I would say that if I'm driving by and adding an LC identifier to something, I think that counts just as much as when I've made a whole new item from scratch, regardless of what project I may have done it for. Which I suppose is another vote in favor of the outreach dashboard model, because then you don't have to put a new statement on every single thing you touch.
But you have to be logged into your right account.
Yeah, you have to be logged into the right account, which I guess might not be the end of the world, because don't funnels have different accounts for different purposes? Like, I know that I have a Cornell account, and then I also have like a Cornell CJK funnel login that I never use but should. Does
That's true.
does the music funnel do that?
Yeah, yeah, we do.
Um, I found what might be an obvious hack or might be just a really terrible security practice, but I just added dash MCO to my username and I use the same password for both accounts.
Oh my
So my
God,
browser,
Crystal.
sorry, I
This
know
is
it's
recorded.
bad.
It's going on the internet.
Well, I didn't say what the password was. And I could change it any time, but like you can just toggle back and forth in your browser. And that makes it super easy. Hooray.
Yeah, terrible security practices, but if it works for you personally, I've
Yeah.
it,
I
it's an
trust that not
absolute.
very many people want to break into my Wikidata account for MCO, I
Yeah, yeah.
guess.
I don't know. My toolbar is a mess right now because I've decided that the everything I do in Firefox is not EMCO, and everything that I do in Google Chrome is EMCO. So my toolbar is an absolute mess.
That's probably way smarter and more secure.
But just to get back to Kevin's point, like, it's totally fine, encouraged to double dip. Maybe what we could do is we could have an outreach for like all the EMCO stuff, and then you can put your P5008 on your specific music cataloging funnel stuff. Would that be too burdensome though?
I don't know if it matters. I mean, I can put P5008 for both. It would take a couple extra keystrokes and it would come up. So like it's not the burden of entering another item on that property is not a big deal. It's mostly just like, is that okay? And I mean, everybody says it's okay, so I'm gonna do that. But I wasn't sure, like, do I have to delineate my projects between different sort of communities? Um, but yeah, this is good. I I don't I don't know how the best way to do statistics. I'm not gonna I can't Yeah, I see good things about both ways, so I'm not sure what's better.
Crystal brought up the fantastic point that right now everything is so in flux that it's hard to break the rules because we're still building everything. All right. With 1 minute left, does anyone have any last minute questions, comments, concerns? Oh, there is no thank you slide on this presentation, but thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate that you came. All right. Hearing no other questions, comments, concerns. Of course, our email is always open. I believe it's like EMCO Wikidata registry. It was something. Whatever email you got this Zoom link from, that's how you contact us. And you should contact us whenever you want. Thank you all so much again for coming. Have a good evening, afternoon, wherever you are. Bye.